This video will contain mentions of rape, gore, and both physical and mental abuse. If any of this makes you uncomfortable, feel free to stop watching. It also contains spoilers. Killing Stalking is a South Korean manhwa written and drawn by an author who goes by the name of Kugi. If you haven't read Killing Stalking, I'm sure you've heard of it, and if you haven't heard of it, then here it is. Killing Stalking is a very popular manhwa. For me, it was the first manhwa I'd ever seen since I'm undoubtedly a manga reader. But I'm sure it's the same for many others, and I may be wrong since I'm new to the manhwa scene myself, but Killing Stalking seemed to act as a gateway to the world of manhwa for thousands of new readers. I'm only saying this because I can't think of any widely popular manhwa I saw on every corner of the internet before Killing Stalking. If anyone's got any idea, feel free to educate me on that. But when it comes to Killing Stalking, this manhwa seems to have an infamously horrible reputation. Only recently, news of a Killing Stalking animated adaptation was announced, and it was met with some avid backlash, with people immediately jumping on the wagon of stomping this series into the ground. My immediate thought to the reaction was, why is this happening? Is it because the story's bad? Is the author a terrible person? Are people just shamelessly homophobic? Well, actually, the story's pretty good for the most part, so it's not that. The author, as far as I know, hasn't done or said anything bad and is just your regular writer, so that can't be the reason. And when it comes to homophobia, it's actually a good portion of the LGBT community who don't like this series, so the series focusing on the relationship of two men isn't it either. Then what else could it possibly be? Why does this series have such a shitty reputation? It's the fans. The fans are the reason. Before I explain, let me actually tell you what Killing Stalking is about. Now, for many of you, this will probably be the first instance of getting a rundown of Killing Stalking that isn't from a crazed Twitter post, or from a pessimistic reviewer that's been influenced by said crazed Twitter post. I think I should make my stance on Killing Stalking perfectly clear, which is I am neutral on my feelings for this series. It has some very good parts and some very questionable parts, but overall I just feel meh about it. Actually, when it comes to people who haven't even read Killing Stalking, your reaction to this is what interests me the most. Killing Stalking is about Yoon Bum, who's a university student in his early 20s and is a man in love with another man. Yoon Bum is a complete outsider. He has no friends, no immediate family to turn to, and is clearly disliked by all. He's small and he apparently stinks, which for some reason is something I remember, but the point is Yoon Bum is an underdog through and through. Yoon Bum ends up becoming obsessed with a man called Oh Sung-woo, a complete opposite to Yoon Bum in terms of being popular and is valued amongst his peers. We discover his infatuation with Sung-woo is due to the fact Sung-woo had saved Yoon Bum from being raped during his military service. And soon enough, Yoon Bum becomes so obsessed with Sung-woo he starts stalking him to the point where he breaks into his house. Unfortunately, Sung-woo is actually a complete psychopath and puts on a front to seem normal in front of others. With Yoon Bum sneaking into his house, Sung-woo knocks him out cold and chains him up in his basement. We discover Sung-woo has brutally murdered multiple women, to which Yoon Bum understandably freaks out about, and to avoid the instance of Yoon Bum running away, Sung-woo breaks both his legs. From here on out, we follow Yoon Bum as he tries to get out of the house, or tries to kill Sung-woo, but develops a slight case of Stockholm Syndrome. Meanwhile, an officer with a bad reputation is trying to figure out the cases of murders committed by Sung-woo. From this very basic explanation, I'm sure you can already see two things. One of those things being Killing Stalking is a psychological horror. The other being there is no romance in this story. Because I know people will dispute this, I have to go into a deeper analysis. Straight up, it's obvious both of these characters are very mentally ill, and that's because both of these characters had a traumatic upbringing. Due to Yoon Bum's parents passing, Yoon Bum had to live with his grandparents and uncle, but his uncle was incredibly abusive and beat and starved him regularly. This eventually turned into rape as well, and all throughout it, Yoon Bum was blamed for the abuse he experienced. Meanwhile, Oh Sung-woo had an abusive and negligent father and a mother who suffered from mental illness herself. With her husband beating her, she ended up cheating on him and at one point almost strangled Sung-woo to death. Sung-woo ended up murdering both his parents as a child, and the case for their murder was never solved. Now, as we can see, these two characters' lives are a shit show. It's for this reason there is no romance in this story. There is no actual love, and the fans have deluded themselves into believing that. The hardcore fans of this series are undoubtedly yaoi fans, yaoi being boys' love stories for those who don't know. And they clung onto this series like fucking cocaine. If you're a casual or hardcore fan of this series and you don't like yaoi, then I apologize, and I am not talking about you. I'm mostly talking about the shippers. These fans will have you believe this series is a love story, that this is a story that romanticizes abuse and is about two lost souls finding and fixing each other. No, that's not what this series is about. But let me tell you why they think that. For starters, Yoon-bum isn't immediately killed by Sung-woo, therefore not sharing the fate of Sung-woo's other unfortunate victims. To these fans, this must mean Yoon-bum is special, right? Well, yeah, he's special, but not because Sung-woo loves him. If you look at Sung-woo's victims, there's something very prominent about them, which is that they're mostly women. In fact, the only time I remember Sung-woo actually killing a man was that old guy he brought home from a bar. Sung-woo has a clear dislike towards women. In fact, he's an absolute misogynist. The reason being, he hated his mother for doing nothing but take abuse. And eventually that thought manifested into hating women in general. He even kills a CEO's daughter because he thought she believed she was better than him. And in Sung-woo's sexist brain, a woman cannot be more superior than him. Thing is, Sung-woo actually has a mother complex, which he lets out on Yoon-bum. While Yoon-bum is a man, he's small and frail. And I'm pretty sure the manhwa has Sung-woo mention multiple times how feminine-like Yoon-bum seems. So Sung-woo makes Yoon-bum wear women's clothes and act as a stand-in for his dead mother, abusing Yoon-bum the same way his father abused his own mother. Sung-woo does not love Yoon-bum. Sung-woo is too mentally damaged to love anyone at this point in his life. There's the argument of Sung-woo just being a troubled boy who needs someone to fix him, and it's so creepily familiar to the whole Ted Bundy fan club situation. The thing is, Ted Bundy was a real person, and I'd rather talk to someone who prefers a fictional psychopath over a real psychopath. So it's not the fairest comparison. Anyway, Sung-woo doesn't love Yoon-bum. He abuses him for his own satisfaction, and any scenes of Sung-woo begging Yoon-bum not to go is due to the fact he's pushed his mother's image onto Yoon-bum. And now you're asking, but what about Yoon-bum? Did Yoon-bum really love Sung-woo? This answer can vary depending on what you classify as love, so it's more of a grey area. But I personally don't think there was any true love for Sung-woo in Yoon-bum's heart. My reasoning for this is, going into Yoon-bum's past, it's clear he has a similar level of mental damage, and in turn, his idea of what love is has become skewed. He fell for Sung-woo because Sung-woo saved him from being raped. And when he was younger, Yoon-bum had been raped by his uncle with no one wanting to help him. Yoon-bum was also a complete social reject with no one who loved or even cared for him. Yet he's got Sung-woo telling him he loves him and he cares for him. Sung-woo is making him feel needed, but this isn't love. This is a complete psychological abuse. Sung-woo is a psychopath, yes, but he's incredibly intelligent. He's making Yoon-bum rely on him and want to, quote unquote, willingly stay with him. Sung-woo is using Yoon-bum's mental weakness and traumas to keep him on his side, and because he feels wanted for the first time in his life, Yoon-bum thinks he's in love. When in reality, he's got this crazy motherfucker controlling him like a puppet. So these shippers took all this information and twisted it into something romantic. They took Yoon-bum and Sung-woo's relationship at face value instead of actually analyzing what's happening. I have always wanted to say this, and with this series I can say it with absolute certainty. You are consuming your media wrong. Stop looking at Killing Stalking as a romance, as a story about broken people fixing each other. Take it as what it's written to be, as what the author originally intended. As a story that warns of the effects of long-term abuse and the horrors of psychologically abusive relationships. This series is fantastic at portraying the messages it was made to portray. And even the author has confirmed that Killing Stalking is not a romance. These two aren't in a same-sex relationship because it's a story about love. And I should clarify, this story doesn't exist to tell us gay people are all mentally ill, which they are not. So don't you dare think that. These two are both men because one is a rampant psychotic misogynistic bitch and the other is broken, beaten and depressed to the point he latches onto anyone who shows him even a hint of affection. In fact, the author has stated she hasn't even thought about Sung-woo's sexuality because who he's attracted to isn't the point. It's who he can abuse that's the point. Yoonbum just ended up being a perfect target. This one is just speculation, but I always thought Kugi was purposely taking the bottom and top trope seen in most yaoi media and twisting it into something disturbing. Sungwoo is the strong top because he stays in shape by breaking people's bones and burying dead bodies. Yoonbum is the small bottom because he's been malnourished since he was a child and couldn't grow properly. It's disgusting when you think about it, and it's meant to be. The rampant yaoi fangirls have taken this series that's actually a pretty good horror manhwa and made people believe this is a series that glorifies abuse in gay relationships. So even when people read it, they have the idea that that's what this series is, and how they consume the information given to them after that becomes biased because of the terrible fan base. I genuinely feel sorry for the author of Killing Stalking. Her story really works as a modern day horror that tackles such taboo themes. Yet little did she know, yaoi fangirls would find it and tear it to the fucking ground. So now you know why Killing Stalking has the reputation it does. And granted, fans ruining a series has happened many times before, but I've never seen fans spread misinformation for a series so much to the point that even non-readers have the basic premise of the series wrong. If you haven't read Killing Stalking, I implore you to read it, and if you tried to read it but had a different idea of what it was, I encourage you to go back again with everything I said in mind. As for any fans who ship Sungwoo and Yoonbum together, I will say it again. You are consuming your media wrong. Please step back and evaluate. What you're doing isn't quirky. What you're doing is grossly misinterpreting the relationship given to you. Anyway, thanks for watching. I think Killing Stalking deserved some kind of defense and explanation for why it is the way it is, and I hope I managed to bring across my points well enough. If you have any opinions of anything to do with the series yourself, then let me know because I'm interested to hear it. See you in whatever I make next.